history, apologetics, and current events. From the housetops, coming up next.
The following brings us back during the week of Septuagesima to the very important events that took place in the Garden of Eden. The account is taken from the liturgical year. The serpent said to the woman, "Why hath God commanded you that you should not eat of every tree of paradise?" Genesis 3:1. Thus opened the conversation which our mother Eve so rashly consents to hold with God's enemy. She ought to refuse all intercourse with Satan. She does not, and thereby she imperils the salvation of the whole human race. Let us recall to mind the events that have happened up to this fatal hour. God, in his omnipotence and love, has created two beings upon whom he has lavished all the riches of his goodness. He has destined them for immortality, and this undying life is to have everything that can make it perfectly happy. The whole of nature is made subject to them. A countless posterity is to come from them, and love them with all the tenderness of grateful children. Nay, this God of goodness, who has created them, deigns to be on terms of intimacy with them, and such is their simple innocence, that this adorable condescension does not seem strange to them. But there is something far beyond all this. He, whom they have hitherto known by favors of an inferior order, prepares for them a happiness which surpasses all they could picture with every effort of thought. They must first go through a trial, and if faithful, they will receive the great gift as a recompense they have merited. And this is the gift. God will give them to know him in himself, make them partakers of his own glory, and make their happiness infinite and eternal. Yes, this is what God has done, and is preparing to do for these two beings who but a while ago were nothing. In return for all these gratuitous and magnificent gifts, God asks of them but one thing, that they acknowledge his dominion over them. Nothing surely can be sweeter to them than to make such a return. Nothing could be more just. All they are, and all they have, and all the lovely creation around them, has been produced out of nothing by the lavish munificence of this God. They must then live for him, faithful, loving, and grateful. He asks them to give him one only proof of this fidelity, love, and gratitude. He bids them not to eat of the fruit of one single tree. The only return he asks for all the favors he has bestowed upon them is the observance of this easy commandment. His sovereign justice will be satisfied by this act of obedience. They ought to accept such terms with hearty readiness, and comply with them with a holy pride, as being not only the tie which will unite them with their God, but the sole means in their power of paying him what he asks of them. But there comes another voice, the voice of a creature, and it speaks to the woman. "Why hath God commanded you that you should not eat of every tree?" And Eve dares and has the heart to listen to him, that asks why her divine benefactor has put a command upon her. She can bear to hear the justice of God's will called in question. Instead of protesting against the sacrilegious words, she tamely answers them. Her God is blasphemed, and she is not indignant. How dearly we shall have to pay for this ungrateful indifference, this indiscretion. And the woman answered him, saying, "Of the fruit of the trees that are in paradise we do eat, but of the fruit of the tree which is in the midst of paradise God hath commanded us that we should not eat, and that we should not touch it, lest perhaps we die." Genesis 3:2 and 3. Thus Eve not only listens to the serpent's question, she answers him. She converses with the wicked spirit that tempts her. She exposes herself to danger. Her fidelity to her Maker is compromised. True, the words she uses show that she has not forgotten his command, but they imply a certain hesitation, which savors of pride and ingratitude. The spirit of evil finds that he has excited in this heart a love of independence, and that if he can persuade her that she will not suffer from her disobedience, she is his victim. He therefore further addresses her with these blasphemous and lying words, "No, you shall not die the death, for God knoweth that in what day soever you shall eat thereof, your eyes shall be opened, and you shall be as gods, knowing good and evil." Genesis 3:4 and 5. What he proposes to Eve is open rebellion. He has enkindled within her that perfidious love of self which is man's worst evil, and which, if it be indulged, breaks the tie between him and his Creator. Thus the blessings God has bestowed, the obligation of gratitude, personal interest, all are to be disregarded and forgotten. Ungrateful man would become a god. He would imitate the rebel angels. He shall fall as they did. We'll be back with more from the housetops after this break.
From the Housetops Radio features the same Catholic doctrine, devotion, and inspiration published for over 45 years in From the Housetops magazine. Our Lord told the apostles to preach the gospel without fear, to proclaim the truth from the housetops. Tune in to From the Housetops Radio Sundays at 10:30 a.m. and again at 4 p.m. on WQPH 89.3 FM.
We return to the liturgical year and the events that happened in the Garden of Eden. The serpent's promises had stifled in Eve's heart every sentiment of love for the God that had created her and loaded her with blessings. She is ambitious to be God like him. Her faith, too, is wavering. She is not sure that God may not have deceived her by threatening her with death should she disobey his command. Flushed by pride, she looks up to the forbidden fruit. It seems good to eat, and it is fair to her eyes. Genesis 3:6. So that her senses, too, conspire against God and against her own happiness. The sin is already committed in her heart. It needs but a formal act to make it complete. She cares for nothing but self. God is no more heeded than if he did not exist. She stretches forth her daring hand. She plucks the fruit. She puts it to her mouth and eats. God had said that if she broke his commandment, she would die. She has eaten, she has sinned, and yet she lives as before. Her pride exults at this triumph, and convinced that she is too strong for God's anger to reach her, she resolves on making Adam a partner in her victory. Boldly she hands him the fruit, which she herself has eaten without any evil coming to her. Whether he was emboldened by the impunity of his wife's sin, or from a feeling of blind affection, wished to share the lot of her who was the flesh of his flesh and the bone of his bones, our first father also forgets all he owes to his Creator, and as though there had never been any love between him and his God, he basely does as Eve suggests. He eats the fruit, and by that act ruins himself and all his posterity. No sooner have they broken the tie which united them with God than they sink into themselves. As long as God dwells in the creature whom he has raised to the supernatural state, his being is complete. But let the creature drive his God away from himself by sin, and he finds himself in a state worse than nothing, the state of evil. That soul, which a moment before was so beautiful and pure, is a hideous wreck. Thus it is with our first parents. They stand alone, creatures without God, and an intolerable shame seizes them. They thought to become gods. They aspired at infinite being. See them now, sinners, the prey of concupiscence. Hitherto their innocence was their all-sufficient garb. The world was obedient to them. They knew not how to blush, and there was nothing to make them fear. But now they tremble at their nakedness, and must needs seek a place wherein to hide. The same self-love that had worked their ruin had made them forget the greatness and goodness of God, and despise his commandment. Now that they have committed the great sin, the same blindness prevents them from even thinking of confessing it, or asking the forgiveness of the Master they have offended. A sullen fear possesses them. They can think of nothing but how and where to hide. The guilty pair appear before the great God whom they have offended, and instead of acknowledging their guilt, they seek to palliate and excuse it. But divine justice pronounces their condemnation, and the sentence will be felt by their posterity, even to the last generation. The two beings that had committed the heinous crime had been enriched with every gift of nature and grace. It was not with them as it is with us. Concupiscence, which gives us an inclination for what is wrong, ignorance and forgetfulness, which cloud the intellect of fallen man, these miseries had nothing whatever to do with the fall of our first parents. They sinned through sheer ingratitude. They began by weighing the proposal of revolt when they ought to have spurned it with indignation and conquered by flight. Then by degrees the proposed crime seemed no great harm, because though God would lose their obedience, they would gain by the disobedience. And at length the love of God was made to give place to the love of self, and they declared their independence. Yet God had mercy on them because of their posterity. The angels were all created at one and the same instant, and each of them was subjected to the trial which was to decide his eternal future. Each angel depended on his own act, on his own choice between fidelity to his Creator and rebellion against him, so that they who rebelled drew on themselves the eternity of God's chastisement. The human race, on the contrary, existed as represented in its two first parents, and was plunged by and with them into the abyss of God's reprobation. Therefore God, who spared not the angels, mercifully spared the human race.
We'll be back with more from the Housetops after this break.
Hello, this is Marianne Lindgren with the Apostolate for Our Lady of America, and you are listening to WQPH 89.3 FM Shirley, Fitchburg.
On the WQPH community calendar.
Well, I do want to remind you that we have coming up on the 12th, the next chosen night at St. Bernard's Parish at St. Camillus Church on Mechanic Street in Fitchburg. Doors open at 6:30. There'll be pizza and soda served, and then another episode of The Chosen, and then Father Dolan's talk on it. What's Catholic, what's not, what's biblical, what's not, and what is it all about. So definitely worth your time. So we'd like to see you down there if you get a chance.
WQPH community calendar with Father Peter in Medford, Massachusetts.
With Martha and the cooperation of Marianne, with our pastor, Father Heinz's permission and his support, we are going to have International Virgin Mary statue of Fatima. We'll have the prayer event in St. Joseph Church on March 28th, Friday. So the event will start 8:30 morning with daily mass. Hopefully all the students, the school of St. Joseph students will attend this event. And then throughout the entire day, the director of Our Lady Mary, Marianne, is going to schedule all the rosary prayers, the Divine Mercy prayers. And March 28th is in the midst of Lenten season. So we may have also the Way of the Cross. And then we will end the prayer event at 8 o'clock evening. We as Catholics, we are so honored to have Mother Mary play a big role in our church because we know as a mother who always knows the need of her children, who knows the meaning of love, she will always be there for the children, for the family, to protect, to nurture, to provide. Through the intercession of Mother Mary, we all can come to her Son, Jesus Christ, and then share the salvation her Son, Jesus, our Savior, brought to the world. The International Pilgrim Virgin Statue of Our Lady of Fatima, Friday, March 28th, 8:30 in the morning with Holy Mass, Holy Eucharist, ended on the evening 8 o'clock. So hopefully this will be an event of prayer, event of blessing, and we all now need Mother Mary's intercession, protection, and need her blessing.
Hello, this is Kendra Von Esch. Faith, the size of a mustard seed, is all you need. All you need to do is go to God and ask Him to water, nourish, and help you grow in faith, in trust that God has an amazing plan for your life, that whatever circumstance you are in right now, even if your faith is wavering, that the Lord has you there for a reason. He's helping you trust Him more. He's helping you grow in humility. He's helping your faith rely completely on His providence. What a blessing, Lord. Please help me grow in faith. For more inspiration, go to KendraVonEsch.com.
On the WQPH 89.3 FM community calendar, it's time again for the second annual Shrove Tuesday brunch from WQPH. Shrove Tuesday being the day before Ash Wednesday, so this year it will be Tuesday, March 4th, at Slattery's Restaurant, 106 Lunenburg Street, Fitchburg, Massachusetts. The brunch will run from 10 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. On the menu, same as last year, we're going to have scrambled eggs and ham and stuffed chicken breast and penny and meatballs and other drinks and desserts for people to have. The speaker this year is going to be Monsignor James Maroney of St. Cecilia's Parish in Leominster, and we will also have relics for veneration, including a piece of the True Cross and a relic of St. Camillus. You can purchase tickets several ways. You can go to the website at wqphradio.org and click on the donate button. Just indicate that you're buying tickets. You can email us at wqph893@comcast.net. That's wqph893@comcast.net. Or you can call or text us at 617-459-8735. That's 617-459-8735. Inflation notwithstanding, the price of the tickets is the same as last year, $45 for one. There's discounts if you buy 2 or 4 tickets, and if you buy 10 at $400, you will be listed as a sponsor and mentioned as a sponsor of the event. But if you purchase tickets before February 10th, they are discounted, $40 for one, $79 for two, $155 for three, and the 10 tickets down to $375. So get your tickets early. Again, this is the WQPH 89.3 FM Shrove Tuesday brunch, Tuesday, March 4th, 10 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. at Slattery's Restaurant, 106 Lunenburg Street, Fitchburg, Mass. Monsignor Maroney as the speaker. This has been the WQPH 89.3 FM Community Calendar.
I don't know if everyone knows that the local programming we run on the weekend, we are very excited about the local programming, but it does not happen without your support.
But we cannot pay our bills without doing something like this. Please, our tower bill every month is $1,600 where the transmitter goes.
If you would like to support the local programs that we run, and we are also looking for underwriters for some of these programs, you can go to our website at wqphradio.org.
Hi, this is Tom Price from EWTN saying thanks for listening to WQPH 89.3 FM, Catholic radio serving Shirley, Fitchburg, and the world.
We return to the liturgical year and the events that happened in the Garden of Eden. But let us listen to the 3 sentences pronounced by God after the fall of man. The first is against the serpent and is the severest. The curse, which is already upon him, is deepened, and the pardon, which is about to be promised to the human race, is to be given in the form of an anathema against that wicked spirit that has dared to war with God in the work of his hands. I will put enmities between thee and the woman. She shall crush thy head. Genesis 3:15. Thus does God avenge himself on his enemy. The victory won over the woman is made to turn against the proud conqueror and become his humiliation and his defeat. In his fiendish craft, he had directed his first attack not against the man, but against the woman. She, by nature, was weaker and more credulous. And if he conquered her, he hoped, too well, alas, that Adam would be led to turn against his Creator in order not to displease the creature. All happened as he willed it. But now see how God uses the woman to foil and punish him. He enkindles in her heart an implacable hatred against his and our enemy. This cruel serpent may raise his proud head and here and there find men that will adore him. The day will come when a woman's foot shall crush his head, which refused to bend before God. This daughter of Eve, whom all generations are to call blessed, Luke 1:48, shall be prefigured by other women, Deborah, Judith, Esther, and others, all celebrated for their victories over the serpent. She shall be followed until the end of time by an uninterrupted succession of Christian virgins and matrons who with all their weakness shall be powerful in cooperating with God's design, and, as the apostle says, the unbelieving husband shall be sanctified by the believing wife. 1 Corinthians 7:14. Thus will God punish the serpent's pride. Before pronouncing upon our first parents the sentence they have deserved, he promises to bless their posterity and pours into their own hearts a ray of hope. Forgiveness is promised, but atonement must be made. Divine justice must be satisfied, and future generations be taught that sin can never pass unpunished. Eve is the guiltier of the two, and her sentence follows that of the serpent. Destined by God to aid man in peopling the earth with happy and faithful children, formed by this God out of man's own substance, flesh of his flesh, bone of his bones, woman was to be on an equality with man. But sin has subverted this order, and God's sentence is this: conjugal union, notwithstanding the humiliation of concupiscence now brought upon it, is to be as before holy and sacred, but it is to be inferior in dignity before God and man to the state of virginity, which disdains the ambitions of the flesh. Secondly, woman shall be mother still, as she would have been in the state of innocence, but her honor shall be a burden. Moreover, she shall give birth to her children amidst cruel pains, and sometimes even death must be the consequence of her infants coming into the world. The sin of Eve shall thus be memorialized at every birth, and nature shall violently resist the first claims of him whom sin has made her unwelcome lord. Lastly, she who was at first created to enjoy equality of honor with man is now to forfeit her independence. Man is to be her superior, and she must obey him. For long ages this obedience will be no better than slavery, and this degradation shall continue until that Virgin comes, whom the world shall have expected for 4,000 years, and whose humility shall crush the serpent's head. She shall restore her sex to its rightful position, and give to Christian women that influence of gentle persuasiveness which is compatible with that duty imposed upon her by divine justice, and which can never be remitted, the duty of submission. The curse which is henceforth to lie so heavily on every human being has been expressed in the sentence pronounced against Eve. The curse to which the earth itself is to be subjected is Adam's sentence. Because thou hast hearkened to the voice of thy wife, and hast eaten of the tree whereof I commanded thee that thou shouldst not eat, cursed is the earth in thy work, that is, on account of what thou hast done. Genesis 3:17. Adam had excused his sin. God does not admit his excuse. Yet he mercifully makes allowance for him, seeing that he sinned not so much to gratify himself as to please the frail creature that had been formed out of his own substance. He is not the originator of the disobedient act. God therefore sentences him to the personal humiliation of labor and toil, and of eating his bread in the sweat of his brow. Outside the Garden of Eden there lies the immense desert of earth. It is to be the valley of tears, and there must Adam dwell in exile for upwards of 900 years, with the sad recollection in his heart of the few happy days spent in paradise. This desert is barren. Adam must give it fruitfulness by his toil, and draw from it by the sweat of his brow his own and his children's nourishment. If in after ages some men shall live without toil, they are the exception, confirming the general law and chastisement. They rest because others have labored long and hard for them. Neither will God ratify their exceptional dispensation from labor except on the condition that they give encouragement by their charity and other virtues to their fellow men, in whom Adam's sentence is literally carried out. Such is the necessity of toil, that if it be refused, the earth will yield but thorns and thistles. Such, too, the importance of this law imposed on fallen man, that idleness shall not only corrupt his heart, it shall also enervate his bodily strength. Before his sin, the trees of paradise bent down their branches, and man fed on their delicious fruits. Now he must till the earth and draw from it, with anxiety and fatigue, the seed which is to give him bread. Nothing could better express the penal relation between him and the earth, from which he was originally formed, and which is henceforth to be his tomb, than this law to which God sentences him of being indebted to the earth for the nourishment which is to keep him in life. And yet here also divine mercy shall show itself, for when God shall have been appeased, it shall be granted to man to unite himself to his Creator by eating the bread of life, which is to come down from heaven, and whose efficacy for the nourishing of our souls shall be greater than ever the fruit of the tree of life could have been for the immortalizing of our bodily existence.
The Road of Salvation by Reverend Joseph F. McGlinchey. Miracles were necessary in the beginning of the church because it was necessary that her foundation would appear what it actually was, divine. Once the divine origin of the church was demonstrated by miracles, men could not, without fault, refuse to follow its teachings. The grandeur, the nobility, the lofty character of this mission which Christ has given to his church can hardly be grasped by our little minds. It is so sublime that, as Monsignor Dupont says in one of his pastorals, our Savior has put his whole heart into it. As the Father has sent me, he said to his first missionaries, so I send you. Go teach all nations. This mission is the channel through which the Christian faith is diffused throughout the world. Through this doctrine and the treasures of grace brought upon the earth by the Son of God are communicated to all men. Through this, his kingdom grows strong and is extended. Through this, the fruits of redemption are gathered up. The apostolate is the continuation of Jesus Christ. In giving that which the Son of God gave, it works with a zeal which recalls that of the Son of God himself. The apostolate is a series of prodigies. It conquered the Gentiles for Christ and continues in its work. When it began, the earth was a temple of idols. Now, even if the false religions still dominate vast regions, everywhere his laws are known. His kingdom is proclaimed. Everywhere religion extends itself, and the civilization of the people flourishes in the light of the gospel. The Catholic Church alone has the mission of leading all men along the road of salvation. Neither Protestant missionaries nor those sent by other dissenting and separated churches have any authority to preach and evangelize. Christ gave no other mission than that which he entrusted to the Catholic Church. Truth is but one, and the Catholic Church is the sole depository of this truth. Hence it follows that all men must seek eternal salvation from the mission and through the ministry of the Catholic Church. Their eternal destiny has been entrusted to the zeal and apostolic activity of the Church. Souls will be saved in proportion to this zeal and this activity of the Church in fulfilling her mission. The greater the solicitude of the Church in taking advantage of her strength and resources, the greater the number of souls that will be gained for Jesus Christ, and the more effective and complete will become the redemption.
From the Housetops is produced by the Slaves of the Immaculate Heart of Mary, Still River, Massachusetts.